Hi everyone, Karen from Stitches and Things. Let's have a little talk today about tension. So in Australia and UK, Europe, it's called tension. American patterns will call it gauge. All that means is that the pattern writer is making it to a tightness that suits the project. So we need to make sure that our work is tight enough or loose enough so that it matches what the pattern writer's expectations are to get it to look and be the right size that the pattern writer would expect. When we are looking at tension in general, what happens is your ball, this is a ball of 10 ply, and it has a little square on it, and the little square tells us that it's a 10 centimetre by 10 centimetre square, and it's telling us that if you use 5mm needles, in this case 5mm needles, that you should have 17 stitches and 23 rows to make 10 centimetres. So some patterns you will match that up, particularly 8 plies. If you're making a jumper for 8 ply, it's usually 22 stitches and 30 rows is on there. That's generally matches up for most 8 plies. That's your tension. So what that means is if your tension is correct, I'll put that down. If your tension is correct, then you cast on, let's talk about a jumper needing to have a finished size of 50 centimetres. So if your tension is correct and you cast on the amount of stitches that the pattern writer says, you should get your 50 centimetres. If you are a loose knitter, your garment is going to be bigger. If you're a tight knitter, your garment is going to be smaller. So that's your width. So that's there's a couple of problems there. getting your garment to fit. So what we need to do then is we need to correct our tension by using a different needle. So if for a loose knitter and our garment ends up too big, we need to make it smaller, so we need to use smaller needles. If our garment is too small or our tension is too tight, we need to make it bigger, so we need to use bigger needles. So that's our sideways measurement. When it comes to the row height, that's important too, especially for garments, because, for example, when we're doing the shaping, you can say, oh, don't worry about the tension that goes this way because it's not as important, but it is. It's not important here to here because this can be a measurement. You can hold that up against you and go, oh yeah, that's going to fit. Cool. I'm not too worried about my needle size, my tension. I know my garment fits this way, but maybe I can get it to here. That's fine. What happens is when you're doing shaping, if you're a tight knitter and you didn't correct your tension, then this shaping is going to be shorter because you're tighter, and the amount of rows that you're doing and the amount of rows the pattern said, but it's going to be shorter. So your armhole is going to be smaller. Your neck shaping is going to be smaller. And the same as if you're a loose knitter, your armhole's going to be bigger, your neck's going to be bigger, your shoulder shaping's going to be bigger. So when it comes to shaping for a garment, it is really important to get your tension right. When we come to things like scarves, this one here is 8 ply. The tension for this should be 22 stitches and 30 rows, but I've used a 6mm needle. And that's where your pattern writer is guiding you by what they want the garment to feel like. So quite often with scarves and shawls, we use a much bigger needle. In the case of this one, we want it to be squishy and soft and, drapey around us. Whereas a jumper, if we did the same thing, it is going to drop and grow and end up massive after you've washed it, and the arms are going to come down to here. We can't do that with a garment or a beanie as well. You'll find a lot of people complain their beanie stretched. It can be the fabric, but half the time it was knitted too loose in the first place. It's relaxed a little bit and suddenly it's too big and you're in trouble. So there are a couple of things. If it has to fit, then you have to take the time to make sure that your tension works. So what I've done is I've just got two things in my hand here. This one was knitted super firm. So I'm going to call it carpet. It's too firm. It's very, very firm. So it's knitted. It's obviously a cable. I've got this. I searched. I couldn't find it. I have got this one. I still can't see it. I have looked around. I have got this one. This one was done by a tight knitter. I've got one that's done by a loose knitter. The loose knitter one is too loose. It's quite sloppy and it's grown. This one seriously feels like a piece of carpet. So this one really needs to be an in-between. So this one was done by quite a firm knitter. This one has been purposefully knit loose to make it long and squishy. So that's a couple of interesting things. So I have got a ball of 10 ply in my hand, and the 10 ply, as we said before, supposed to use a 5mm needle. The pattern that I'm working on at the moment is a garment, and it's 10 ply. The pattern tells me that I need to be using 7mm knitting needles. So that's 2 sizes bigger than recommended. Obviously it's supposed to have and it is quite soft and drapey. I am dubious that it's going to hold. I think this one is going to grow and relax. I may have to do some, I don't know what I'll do if it drops, but anyway, we'll worry about that later. But that's just an example of pay attention to what the pattern writer is asking for. A lot of people will say, oh, the pattern says 7mm, but the ball says 5. I should do it in 5. It's like, no, the pattern writer asked you for 7 for a reason. They want it to look a particular way. They want it to have a particular finish. So, it doesn't always work. So the other thing that's interesting is when people will say, my pattern is for 10 ply. Can I just use an 8 ply and make a bigger size? Sometimes it works. And if you're an experienced knitter and you're adventurous, and you can go off target a little bit, yes, you can, but just be mindful. The width, we can deal with the width. We can say, well, we know the width is going to work. We know it's going to work to here, but is the shaping going to work? So be really, really careful. If it's only a little bit, so 8 and 10 ply, there's not a big difference, but a lot of people have a 12 ply pattern. They want to knit an 8. That's just fraught with problems. Find a better pattern. Same as people that want to knit a 4 ply pattern in 8. They really love the 4 ply pattern that the 2-year-old had, but they want to knit it for the 8-year-old. And can't we just convert it to an 8 ply? No, I can't just convert it to an 8 ply. It's too hard because of the shaping. If things were just rectangles, it'd be easy, but they're not. And humans aren't rectangles. We're all sorts of shapes. So, yeah, changing things. There's so many patterns around and so many smart people writing patterns. Unless you're a smart person and you can really change things around, don't do your head in. Like it can be really quite tricky. I did put aside my little tension ruler. This one here has got a bit of a magnified piece in it, so you can line it up and count your stitches, but you can just use a ruler. Generally, if you're going to knit a tension square or a gauge swatch, depending on what you like, we make it bigger than our 10 centimeters, about 15 by 15. And then we don't measure our edges that can curl and can be a little different. So we try and do a little bit bigger square and test it out. It's 15, 20 minutes of your life. And I'm going to tell you a sad story. And this is, do as I say, don't do as I do. This garment here, I didn't do a tension square. And I was in the car, so I just started it and I knitted all the way down to here and I put it onto the cables and I stuck it on and thought, yep, it's good. So in the car, I finished it right down to the band and cast it off and then tried it on. And let's just say Sharon McLaren from, I think it was... fast forward to one of those, it came up to here, it shrunk up to here because of the width, and it was very tight, and I pulled it out. So then I went back and read the pattern, and it says that even though it says it's 10 ply, it's 10 ply and something joined together. So I pulled it back to the lace, and then I did some pattern jiggery because I am experienced, and have changed that pattern so now that it does fit. But I did have to pull back 10 hours of work simply because I launched into it like most of us do and got myself a smack on the bum, a lesson to learn there. If you are a tight knitter, it is really, really hard to relax. The only way you're going to correct your tension is to change needle size. Some people are talented enough to change their tension by changing the way they knit. They just knit consciously looser, they knit consciously tighter. But that doesn't always work, because tonight when you're consciously knitting looser and everything's working well, tomorrow night you pick it up and you're watching the news and things aren't going right, and suddenly you've got tight rows in there. So change your needles rather than your style when it comes to that. The correct needle size is quite important. The reason why I started this video today was I had an email from a lady who bought a kit from me that says it needs to have 7mm knitting needles, circulars, 80 centimeters long, because it is a blanket. So the blanket is a nice squishy thick knit, so it's a 14 ply, 7mm needles are about the right size. And she emailed me and said, I haven't got 7mm, but from the knitting shop locally I could only get a 6mm and 37 centimeters long. So she is going to put 200 stitches, and she did tell me she hadn't knitted for a long time, 6mm needles and short. And I sadly had to email her back and say, we're going to have problems, because your 6mm is going to make it too tight. Unless she is a loose knitter, then it'll be okay. But she's going to get to it, but she's not going to get all her stitches on, which is why we use a circular. So have a look at what your pattern is asking for and make sure you've got your correct tools, and make sure you're using tools that are nice to use. If you use garbage needles, you're going to have a garbage time. So just be really, really mindful of using nice tools where you can, because it makes such a difference to how you enjoy a project. I don't know how many of you have gone through your stash and you've got a bamboo needle. Yep, that's a 6mm. Oh, a metal needle, 6mm. Can't find the pairs. Never mind, I'm going to use both of them. It's not very fun. And we do all this stuff generally because we enjoy it, not because we have to. Some people do, but most of us do it because we enjoy it. And if you're using tools that aren't very nice, then hand them on to a knitting group or a charity organisation, and give it to someone that's starting off, and get some decent stuff yourself. So that's kind of a given, to have some nice tools. Nice yarn is good too, but not everyone can afford nice yarn. But sometimes it's better to have one project of nice yarn and really enjoy the project, really enjoy the finished product, rather than 3 products of garbage yarn that are like, well, they were nice to make, but don't really like the end result, and you end up giving them away. So just think about what you're doing there. So just be really, really careful with your tension or your gauge. Make sure you check it so you don't end up pulling out your whole garment, and be guided by what the pattern writer is telling you, because they're wanting a particular look. And when you have a look at lace shawls, like they're done with 2-ply using 4mm, 5mm, 6mm needles. And that's because they want a loose, open lace. So don't make your own assumptions unless you're really expert, because you're going to end up pulling stuff out. So that is my little lesson today on tension or gauge and getting things a little bit correct. But yeah, definitely do a test first. Different yarn, different pattern than what's recommended. If things don't match up, if you've picked a 10-ply for a 10-ply pattern, the 10-ply pattern says it's Malabrigo, you've picked up Fiddlesticks, those two haven't been knitted together as a pair, then it's definitely worth doing a little test. 20 minutes out of your life can save you putting stuff in the naughty corner and getting a bit disgusted with the whole process of knitting or crochet, because it can be awful if you've had a few failures that the end result you don't really like. The pattern didn't work out because the sizing was wrong. We want success. We really want success, and I want you to have success. So have a go at those few little tips, and it's nearly getting cold enough for everyone to be in the mood for knitting, and I can't wait. I've got a few things on the go, and I can't wait to show them to you when they're done. All right, that's it from me. Thanks, everyone.